All right, welcome everyone. This is Bill Houston with the Bill Houston Podcast. I'm just adjusting some levels and things. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm not sure if anybody's tuning in right now. I'm going to check the live stream in just 1 second, but I'm just going to start out by saying that this is harder than you might think. Okay. So I just want to say that I work in the public interest, and I rely upon donations and grants in order to keep on doing this kind of show. So I appreciate donations in any amount, and so you can actually donate to my donate link right down there, tinyurl.com/donate to Bill Houston. And if you want to see the kind of work I've been involved in for the last 10 years or so, it's mostly environmental work, but I do local democracy work as well, and other issues. So just go to, just Google search for Bill Houston's fracking resume, and that will give you some idea of the work I've been involved in. But I'm going to bring in right away, after these introductory remarks, I'm going to bring in a guest that I have on today is John Solak. John Solak is from Binghamton. And John, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay. Say again, John.
Hello, Bill.
Yep, we can hear you. That's great. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
I'm amazed. This is the first time I've tried to do a live stream with a call-in like this. So it looks like all the tech is working, it really took. It was complicated to get this working. So I'm glad you're on, John. Thanks for calling in. So give us a little bit of bio on yourself, just for the people that might be watching this. Just tell me a little bit about yourself and the kind of work that you do. The local government, local democracy, citizen journalism. Just give me a bio in a couple of seconds here.
Okay, I've been on the public meeting circuit for about 50 years.
Wow.
Why I got involved with it, I can't tell you. Well, I can tell you, but it's a longer story. Essentially, my college buddy came home, and one afternoon he was going somewhere, and I said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to the Board of Supervisors meeting." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "My old man says I got to go. It's historic. It's their last meeting." And from there, I went and followed the charter form of government by Broome County, which was a disaster. And even before that, I was dabbling, putting the politicians on the spot with call-in programs. And I went from there. I'd never do it again, I'll tell you that.
Why is that? You mean you'd never repeat this path?
Well, I made a mistake of acquiring enough knowledge on the local scene and the local networks, which no matter who dies or who retires in Florida, they seem to go on. The tentacles are long and extended, and I just wouldn't have gotten involved with it to the extent that I did. However, let me tell you something about Binghamton during those days. It was fairly easy to launch a national movement. The Binghamton Press and papers like that would cover you. One of the people that they launched back then was Randall Terry. They launched his career locally, and from then he went on to Phil Donahue and the New York Times and Crossfire and everything else. So it was a fairly good launching pad for activists. In other places, that I've been, you couldn't get to a letter to the editor published.
Right. Yeah, we're very lucky that we have WNBF does a really good job at putting on local voices. That's a huge platform. And you were, I remember probably 15 years ago, you were involved in public access TV, as was I. And you used to do a show. I used to see you when they put the city meetings on TV. And I think that's where I first started seeing you, and then I started coming to the meetings. And you used to do a show with Steve Garlock. That was a great show. That was some great television, man. That was great
Well,
stuff.
you were the rainmaker on that one, and you people had listened to you, particularly the politicians that signed the cable contracts. We wouldn't be in this mess that we are in now. But you opened up the door for me, and a lot of other people followed after that, and it was very good cable casting. I'll tell you, we almost had the whole lineup there was bigger and stronger than CBS.
It was at one time. That was really a happening thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was beautiful, and then unfortunately, people got the dish, and then city council doesn't even have a video switcher. They just have like a security cam footage now. So it's really suffered, and there's no reason for it. I mean, Bill, if we're the home of innovation, I think we can at least get some of these governmental meetings streamed.
Yeah, right. Yep. So, but I've asked you on here, John, to talk today to me because I know you really understand the machinations of government. I think a lot better than I do because you've been on this what you call the public meeting circuit for a lot longer than I have. So I've been, and I know you know about this, but I'm just going to orient the listeners who might be just tuning into this that I've been following this Endicott battery facility, and it was sold to us originally as being a manufacturing facility, and that was 2 years ago, and they said it would be here by now, and as you know, it's not here. But what do we have? Well, we've got some kind of and they call it a recycling facility, but a major component of it is an incinerator. And what concerns me is not only as a person that's lived in Endicott for 10 years and I breathe the air and drink the water here, but I'm just concerned that the process that this facility has gone through has been really disregarding the rights of the people of the village of Endicott. There hasn't even been a public hearing on it. It seems to be being fast-tracked. So I've been looking at this, John, and I've been trying to understand the dynamics of how this all came to be. And I keep running up against the Empire State Development Corporation as being like the origin of the money that made this deal all happen. So I don't really know the history of this organization. I don't really know how it came to be, but I'm just gaining an understanding. I'm just wondering, can we have a conversation about the Empire State Development Corporation? Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you know about this organization, the history, how they work. Give me the deets.
Yeah, well, Endicott has lost its identity. I mean, and nobody really knows. We know what it was, but we have no idea where we are now and where we're going. And you're right about the machinations. Some of it comes out of the Union Endicott School District and the former superintendent that failed there and went on to the university. Her husband has a startup company on the avenue, I believe. And the people in the school district try as they may. They envision like a Washington Avenue with cafes and restaurants, for them to spend their ample paychecks. However, it's not happening. And somewhere along the line, we got hooked up to lithium. And this is part of the regional councils bill, which essentially give Harvey Stanger, the BU president, the position of economic czar. He says he spends 30% of his time on this regional council. And what they've done is, rather than concentrating on the Broome County economy or even stretching it out to Tioga, they've got this region that it goes from Corning, to Chobani in Shenango County. So, I mean, if you claim enough territory, you're going to have some success somewhere. But most people in Broome County wouldn't consider, unless they're going to a stack football game or something, or making their once-a-year day trip to Corning. Most people are totally disconnected from Corning and Elmira and that, and they go by the brand. They've got all kinds. You almost need a scorecard. It's so Byzantine, Southern Tier, Soaring, and all this stuff. But the Empire State Development has broken up into sections and regions. I mean, these are the people that gave you the Buffalo Billion. These are the people that were involved in the multi-million-dollar ripoff known as SUNY Polytechnic. But what the directors are is they're just patronage jobs. They don't have to know anything about anything at all. And somewhere along the line, it filtered out of the university that lithium and batteries were going to be the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we've attracted these charlatans from the subcontinent, from White Plains, from all over, from the Caribbean, and we've given them a home, and they are essentially peddling a version of scientific fraud.
You say it's scientific fraud. Can you explain? Can you dive into that a little bit?
Well, this is the new thing. What it is it's someone with credentials comes along and they can bamboozle the public whose backyard it is going to be in. They can essentially answer any and all questions, and they will throw their credentials along with their monkey talk at you and make you feel as if you're inferior because you don't have, it's almost as if they have a different periodic table of elements than you do. And they're con men. They're like Professor Irwin Corey. If you remember that, he was after vaudeville, but he was on the Ed Sullivan Show a lot. He used to engage in double talk. He was a comedian. And a lot of the stuff that's coming out of the university, the average layperson can't refute because it's out of his domain, bailiwick, whatever. But yet it is fraud all the same. The proof in the pudding as far as the university goes is not how many patents they get related to this lithium jazz. It's how much money they're earning. And the entire state university system, including Binghamton University, doesn't generate that much from their intellectual property. So we can talk about grants and loans and research all we want, but it's hard for us living here. They just want to live here and to dispute these people. But there's enough holes and cracks in it, and you have found many of them, and I think it's a sheer brilliance that you outed them, and the fact that they have an incinerator, which is not only the lithium but the cobalt and the nickel and all that other jazz that's inside these batteries, and you've and it's almost as if with this quote unquote recycling, you call it an incinerator. I agree with that. They've got to have this. This is the cart before the horse, before the actual production of the batteries that will never ever gain any traction, I don't believe.
You're saying this is the cart before the horse. You're saying so that the I just want to understand your analogy. The horse being the manufacturing facility that isn't here yet?
Yeah. Well, this Imperium 3 jazz that was announced, this so-called consortium, which really consists of a penny Australian mining stock, and this guy that came here that's associated with the university from the subcontinent. They all were supposed to have hundreds of people producing thousands of batteries already in place this December. The deadline has come and gone. They've taken their dog and pony show to Australia and to Western Europe, wanting to open up similar facilities there. All essentially they've got here is really an office. They did buy some equipment from a bankrupt firm in North Carolina, and they're carrying it on their books, claiming it's worth, 100 times more than what they paid for it. But it's really a dubious venture, and it's not off the ground. And now they've backpedaled to say that somewhere down the line they may have 40 people working there. So, promises are broken. Hype is everywhere. But so they got locked into this. What I'm saying is, Stanger and the university got, and it's going to get worse because of this co-sharing of a Nobel Prize by Stanley Whittingham. Who knows how much of the research he walked away with when he walked away from ExxonMobil. But this is where they're directing us, and we're just blindly supposed to follow their chartered course and agree with everything they say because they're the you and anything for the you.
So the thing about the Empire State, I'm glad you brought up the way the Empire State Development Corporation and the way the money is kind of divvied up in New York is in these regional councils, because what I see is when you go to Governor Cuomo's YouTube channel, what you see them going around to all the different regions: Hudson Valley, Southern Tier, Finger Lakes, Western New York. They go around to all these different regions and with basically, their checkbook out. And they, in fact, I just, we had the Endicott mayor. He was term limited, so he's out of office now. Or I'm not sure if he is term limited, actually. He's retired. He decided to not run for office anymore. So there was a change in local government, and went to the first board meeting over there, and they said that they were visited by the Empire State Development Corporation, and basically the representative said, got their checkbook out and got their pen handy and said, "What do you need money for?" So it's like, the local governments seem to view the Empire State Development Corporation as this kind of a cash machine. And what's curious to me also, do you have any comments about that before I bring up my next point? Or
yeah, this is the disaster of local government. Instead of doing the things that are their charge, doing things that are in their charter, where they have authority, they've gone off to the glitz and glamour of economic development. And most of these deluded people envision themselves as an entrepreneur. I would point to a thing that's on YouTube. Steve Jobs goes to the Cupertino City Council meeting, and the thing is just incredible to watch because you see all these council people gushing over his presence that are in their charter, and they ask him to do more. And this was when he was
the season for holiday gift,
the big headquarters. And he says, well, I think he says something like, well, 50 million. Well, and they asked him to do more for the community, and he said, well, I think 50 million in property taxes is enough. And the difference between what we're trying to do here and what they do out there is most of those deals are not, they're privately sourced venture capital startups. They don't really get the governmental money. I mean, they've got consortiums and all the rest. I'm not saying that they don't put the money in. But here, you get money, and it's sort of like a wildcatting thing, and it strangleholds. It prevents anything from coming to pass that's organic and natural. Because first of all, they need office space and they need incubators. No one can't possibly start in a college dorm or in a garage. And it doesn't put forth the people with the best ideas because they're quirky people. They're real creatives are not any good with money. They have things that they want to pursue, see if they work, and if they don't work. These people are government grant oriented from the get-go. I mean, they want to go on sabbatical. They want to live la vida loca. If they come up with something, fine. If they don't, fine too. But they'll go through that money.
John, I'm really glad you brought that up because that's exactly, and we haven't really discussed this in depth before now, but I'm finding that your observations are very similar to mine in that this battery deal doesn't seem to be, I'm talking about really both the recycling facility and also the Imperium thing. It doesn't seem to be an organic thing. I mean, I would expect the way that businesses work is, like you said, a couple of kids, a couple of guys in a garage, they come up with a great idea, they start some prototypes, it works, they get some success, and then they go out looking for money. They want to expand. That's not what this is. What I see it is that, some planners at the state level got together and, like you said, they just got an idea. They've got friends, they're looking at the Wall Street Journal and they're saying, hey, this lithium looks like a hot business. Let's get in on this action. So how do we do it? Well, let's call up our economic development guy over there at the Empire State Development Corporation, and let's see what we can work out. Let's start looking around at the these different regions, and let's see where we can locate this thing. But the thing that troubles me is, John, is this, because the politicians look at when the Empire State Development Corporation comes knocking, they're like, oh, these are the people with the checkbook. So we have to really stay on their good side because we want the money. We want money coming in here. So this non-organic, top-down Cuomo brainchild of this, they want to make Endicott this battery recycling hub or battery production hub. And it does kind of look good on paper, I suppose, but I just, where is it? Where is the manufacturing facility? What we have is this recycling facility, and 1 year ago, John, there was a press release that was from the Empire State Development Corporation, and guess what? It had all the local politicians. It had Jason Garner, Donna Lupardo, and the mayor, John Bertoni, he's the exiting mayor of Endicott, all on there, and saying how great this recycling facility was going to be and how many jobs it was going to bring and blah, blah, blah. No mention of the fact that it's going to have an incinerator and it's going to be putting, at least 3 known cancer-causing chemicals into the air in Endicott. So the reason I bring this up, John, is because we're fighting this permit. I'm fighting this permit. We've got some more people that are interested in fighting this permit. There's some local people. I'm surprised we actually are getting some traction on this issue this time around, which we haven't on some previous issues that we worked on. But, it just seems like that, anyway, do you have any comments on that? Or?
Well, this is where the local governments have betrayed the people. They don't want to concentrate on their areas, which everybody agrees that they should be involved in, and they want to go off on these tangents. And they almost think that economic success or economic development is a store-bought item that you can go in and just purchase it.
Yep.
And success is guaranteed. When in fact they're taking a Mississippi Riverboat gamble, not only with the taxpayers' money, and these things are very highly speculative,
yep.
And they're taking a huge gamble with the public's health. So, I was at one of those meetings with you, and I met up there with you, and what was funny to me is. Those guys involved, some of them were likable people, the guy from the Caribbean, and there was one, I'll use the word prick there, that he was easy to drum up a case against because he was arrogant. I forgot the fellow's name.
He was the guy that, if it was the guy that was sitting in the front row, he was actually an attorney. His name is Thomas J. Fusillo with Barclay and Damon. He's been contracted with the permittee to help, with the legal matters, getting the permit through.
Yeah, that's the guy. So he was easy to trump up a case against. The other guy, they know their stuff, but the point is, there's no plebiscite on this, as you say. It's being top down imposed. And it's almost as if they've said, it has to go into Endicott because Endicott's already polluted anyway, so what have we got to lose? Look, if it was a mile or two where those nice homes are there, where the school teachers and the people, and what's interesting about the United States Census, the last one, 18% of the people in Endicott that live up there. Now, I'm not talking about the Little Italy section, but up past that. 18% of the people, the households in Endicott, New York, make over $300,000. So there is a substantial, at least one percenters there that are doing well in education and medicine and other fields. But they don't represent the people that are going to take the hit with all this pollution and put up with anything that occurs at that site. So it's I mean, you mentioned John Bertoni, God bless him, another senior citizen mayor of Endicott that supplemented his Social Security check with this pay, not even a caretaker. His sole accomplishment seems to be chopping the trees down that were decent on Washington Avenue and making it look like a Quentin Tarantino movie scene. He made Harry Lewis of Johnson City look like a Churchill. I mean, this guy did absolutely nothing. He's a disgrace. And now we have, I guess she calls herself coming in, the woman of action. Well, the woman of action better get on the stick, because essentially what happens is they get in, they make their state of the village address, and then sort of a whirlwind happens, and they end up supporting the status quo all the way. But Bertoni was a disaster, and at least Harry Lewis has a Walmart to his credit.
Wow, right. Yeah, so, so here we have this permit that we're, for this incinerator, this being fast-tracked by the DEC. And so what are we doing? I'm trying to mobilize people because I've looked into the permit, and I see troubling things. I see formaldehyde that causes cancer. I've seen dioxins are going to be emitted, that causes cancer. Hexavalent chromium, that causes cancer. Hexavalent chromium, by the way, was the chemical that Erin Brockovich got started fighting. She had hexavalent chromium contamination in her town of Hinckley, California. So they're going to be emitted into the air here in Endicott. So I'm very concerned about that. So I'm trying to mobilize people to do what? What's the arena that we've been given to play in? It's called this permit. It's called an ASF, Air State Facility Permit. So there's this procedure that they have to go through by law, and on the books it all looks like it's on the up and up, but in reality, we're getting no public hearing. They're playing hide and seek. The DEC is playing hide and seek with the permit documents, not giving us easy access to it. You have to actually FOIA the documents. And hey, come on, John, how many people are there like us that go to these meetings and try to pay attention to what's going on? There aren't too many, from my experience. There's a few.
Well, essentially people come out when a single issue moves them. But, you've got all these kids in poverty in Endicott. They're the ones that are going to get the cancers. And, maybe it's just viewed, maybe they're viewed as, in other words, the cobalt comes out of the ground in Africa or wherever it comes out of. Those kids don't get anything, except sick. So maybe this is just the other end of the equation. Maybe this is just third world time here.
It's amazing. So here we are. We're fighting this permit, and where do we go? We've been given this arena to play in, this permit procedure. So now we're going on bended knee to the DEC and saying, "Oh, great DEC, will you please grant us a public hearing?" We on bended knee, the poor people of Endicott, and the DEC thinks about it, and they're. I'm thinking there's a very good chance they're going to issue this permit just before Christmas, because that's what they did with the Speedies permit for the leachate trucks. It was just exactly before Christmas 3 years ago when DEC blessed this program that began in 2011 in secret as a secret pilot program. There was no notification made in any DEC publications, and so they're going to do the same thing here, I fear. So we got to scramble a lawsuit. Then we're going to have to sue the DEC if they issue this permit because they haven't followed the law. And the irony that I'm having, the issue or the conflict of interest that I see is, John, who's the CEO of the DEC? It's the governor, right? They work for the governor. That's an executive agency. And the Empire State Development Corporation, that's what do they call it, a public benefit corporation? Who controls that? Governor Cuomo. So we're going to one organization that's controlled by the governor and asking for a fair hearing on this permit, on this air permit for this incinerator, and he's the same guy that's promoting this facility. So that seems to me like a major conflict of interest.
Well, also, I don't think we can talk about this without talking about the Huron campus and the wealthy local families that own that real estate and want to see that real estate rented out. These billionaire families, when IBM was broken up, they bought the business and then they separated out the real estate. And they've got that real estate, and they want to milk as much of it. And as I understand it, actually, I think another real estate company has been set up fairly recently that will cloud things further. And these are the local people that have essentially made money, scavenging the remains of IBM. But when that deal first went down, and that was an Empire Zone deal. People were talking about EIT, and I went to the Endicott board and I said, this is primarily a real estate deal to allow these people to own this real estate, and that's what they're doing. So that's they've got a big interest in seeing this thing go forth, and that's sad. I mean, look at how they've maintained those IBM buildings. I mean, they're not even painting them anymore.
Yeah, some of those on the east side of that intersection that they call Hollywood and Vine, McKinley and North Street. Oh my God, those buildings are just crumbling and falling apart. Yeah, they haven't.
Yeah. I mean, Hollywood and Vine was the Capitol Record Tower, and before that it was Wallach's Music City in Hollywood, where Nat Cole and the others, Sinatra, started Capitol Records, the Wallachs. And that was actually on the second floor of the Wallach's Music City record and musical instrument store. But you're right, that complex there, and it's interesting. I mean, these wealthy families that have made money there for over a decade have and busted out EIT and stuck a couple of $1 million in their pockets right before they declare bankruptcy. Somewhere along the line, they said they've got Endicott officials to think, well, it's Endicott's problem or the town of Union's problem. It's their problem, and they should be forced. They've made their money. Now they should be forced to do whatever they have to do to get that site marketable. But it's just become like a community problem. I don't understand it. That's why I was against the EIT deal, and I simply implored the people at the time to do what they did in Tucson. I mean, the IBM facility in Tucson closed down. It's a high-tech complex with 18, 20 companies in it, Fortune 500 companies. So they're doing well in Tucson, but they extracted a deal from IBM that was not this crazy thing that Pataki engineered that we're stuck with. So there's just it's a never-ending thing. I mean, I guess it will end when they start burning this stuff and people get all kinds of cancer. People show up at the walk-in clinic with little school kids with testicles the size of bowling balls, and maybe that will end the deal. I don't know.
Well, a lot of people. I just want to say really quick that we have looks like 6 people watching simultaneously now, and Parker Owens is in the chat. Hi, Parker. And somebody named History Hunting with Tom left a. He's a fan of yours, John. I'm not going to say what he wrote, but he's in the chat making trouble. But at least we got 7 people now watching live. This is amazing. So. Yeah, in terms of those buildings, the Huron campus buildings. So one of the things that I've looked at was the Love Canal. Okay, Love Canal. That's up there by Niagara Falls area, and it was.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Actually, homes are more expensive in Love Canal than they are in Endicott.
Oh my God, that's something to say. So right around the early 1980s, that's when people started getting sick in that area. And the EPA came in, and they found a lot of industrial chemicals, and there are a lot of the same industrial chemicals that are spilled in Endicott, by the way, for anybody that wants to know. And so what's the difference? Well, the difference is Love Canal was evacuated. They put a fence around it, and they tore down a whole bunch of homes, and they basically moved the people off. So But they didn't do that in Endicott, and it's a very similar situation. Early 1980s, that's when they first started becoming aware of this big TCE problem in Endicott. They took down a lot of homes. There's a lot of those big parking lots that are in Endicott now. Those people don't understand. If you look at old airplane photos, airplane surveys, you'll see that back in the 1970s, there used to be homes there. So a lot of them did get taken down. So people that I talk to are saying that in some of these environmental organizations that I belong to, they're saying that what really needs to happen to truly remediate the chemical contamination that still exists under those buildings, they're going to have to tear the whole buildings down and dig the soil out and send it off somewhere, So rather than try to redevelop those buildings,
well, you have to hand it to IBM the systematic way that they bought that property for the parking lots, and they really did it semi discreetly to the fact that nobody was clued into what was really going on. So that was a great skill, a great execution on their part. But look, Bill, you've got quite a reputation in this community, and I enjoy you. We've always gotten along well, and I don't think you're quite the monster you're made out to be. You're very thoughtful. You know your stuff, and I just think that this lithium thing I invested in a battery company. It was called Valence Technology. Now this is going back, almost 20 years ago. They did end up going private as a public company. They had fairly good batteries, but they're now located in Austin, and everybody in New York State is familiar with an Albany company called Plug Power. This thing is, unless you're Elon Musk, and even if you are him, this thing is going to be, in fact, the big guys, the Volkswagens, are now getting into the lithium deal. So I don't know if battery production is ever going to take place to the level that it's already been promoted at. And this recycling thing, it sort of reminds me of when IBM was doing that stuff. They had guys, former executives, were taking crowbars to cathode ray tubes or whatever those screens are, and whacking the plastic out of them. And that was their recycling operation there. You'd see an old buddy of yours, and you say, "Geez, I thought you were a big shot," and the next thing you know, he had a button-down shirt and a crowbar hacking away at a piece of equipment.
They still have that. That's called Geodis. IBM spun off a separate business unit called Geodis, and they're up there in building 46. And that's still a happening thing. The local people that work there call it crash and bash.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's go ahead.
No, I think you're dead on. Like I say, I think you handled the attorney there very, very well. You were getting under his skin. He was clearly irritated. The other guys at that meeting that I attended that were associated with this company seemed to be fairly reasonable people. But the fact is, once you labeled it the incinerator, that was the end of it. I don't see how they can release this stuff. Look, they're not going to get in. Remember, they used to tell us, well, if we don't take this, somebody else will. Well, I don't think anybody's going to take that.
Right. Hey, I got to tell you really quick. History Hunting with Tom actually is a friend of yours. I'm going to tell. He explained what he said, so I'm going to tell you now what he said. He says, John from Binghamton is great. John liked the toilet. And then when I mentioned that I wasn't going to read his comment, he said, nah, John said that to a protester. It was hilarious. Yeah. Before the young woman grabbed my wrist and tried to take my phone off me, she
she did some sort of passive aggressive technique. I'm an old guy. I'm unfamiliar with this, but she was sort of attractive, so I engaged her, and she wanted to know my name. So I said John, and then she looked at me, and I said like the toilet.
Ah, okay, that's where that comes from. So,
Yeah.
so we got some fans. Let's see, we have. Let me tell you really quick. 4 concurrent viewers at the time. So thanks for everybody for tuning in. So. We talked about a lot of things. We talked about here on campus, the present state of it, battery recycling. We talked about Imperium 3. What do you got going? What are your interests right now? What are you tracking over there in Binghamton and just Broome County at large right now?
Well, come January 1st, all IDAs are going to have to stream their meetings live, so that should be a hoot. They were before putting up live audio, but some of the board members actually quit the board because they didn't want the live audio to go out. They didn't mind it going out after the meeting, but so a few of the movers and shakers actually left the board just on the audio. So it'll be interesting to see January 1st when all these IDA meetings are streamed. I streamed one, and I told them they didn't go over because I think it only got 3 or 4 views on Periscope, so they don't have a charismatic bunch over there. But,
it's just such an arcane thing that a lot of people don't even know what. In fact, I don't even think that I know. Like you brought when we talked about this before, we met you. I talked about the IDA, but there's also there's another one that you brought up. What are the two, and how are they different?
Oh, the Binghamton Local Development Corporation.
There's the LDC and the IDA. How do they? How are they different?
Well, the LDC, the Broome LDC is a late bloomer. That thing is not that old, and they used that to issue bonds. One of the ones, there's that utopian village up on the hill in Endicott where they have 3 forms of care. The first one in the New York State, where they start you off in your own apartment, and then as you fail, they put you into some sort of assisted living, and then you go into the happy hunting grounds of the full-blown nursing home. You just have to give them the deed to your house, and you're in there. But that was funded by $80 million worth of bonds that were underwritten by a combination of Broome LDC and Broome County IDA. And actually, later on it came to view that they really weren't supposed to finance these bonds through the IDA at all because it was supposedly a nonprofit institution. And they lost a great deal of money because what they did, the board members there at the, what the hell is it called, the village, Good Shepherd Village, the board members there speculated in the swaps market and interest rates, and they lost $3 million. So that money had to be recovered. Look, they're putting people in business, whether it be in the profit area or the nonprofit area, and increasingly the nonprofits are losing their rear end here and going out of business and going insolvent. But they're just putting people in business. It's almost as if it's like a Hollywood lot, Bill. You would, if you know somebody in Hollywood, they'll give you a bungalow, and you'll have a development deal, and they'll pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you'll be like a movie producer, but none of your movies will ever come out, and you'll be talking about scripts and smoking a cigar and looking at your secretary, but you'll never actually get anywhere. But you'll be touted as being successful. Well, this is the same thing. It's a lot of this is play acting, role playing. It's not real business. There's no profit. I mean, look, we've seen this woman upstate that did a sort of an Elizabeth Holmes, the Theranos. She had some sort of company upstate here that got a lot of this economic development money, and she was snitchling it into it to fund her lifestyle. So there's all kinds of fraud that's going on with these grants and loans, and really, again, you're up against scientific fraud, and you're up against the saying, well, when are you going to make a profit? Is this viable or isn't it viable? And let's not mention that our good friends, the South Koreans, are behind this battery plant, lithium recycling plant.
Right. Yep, the South Koreans, and there's quite a bit of differences. I've been looking into the differences. I mean, one of the things, I'm not completely against industrial activity, but I just want to make sure that it gets done safely. So one of the concerns that I have, if you get on Google Earth and look at that South Korean facility, and if you look at another one that's in a place called Hoboken in Belgium, if you believe it or not, Hoboken is part of Antwerp, and there's a similar facility there. Their stacks, the smokestacks, are between 200 feet tall and 500 feet tall. So the stacks on the existing stacks on that building 259 over there are only 115 feet, and a lot of these chemicals are heavier than air, so they're going to be raining down on Endicott. And my buddy has the flower shop over there on North Street, and he sells flowers different times a year, and he calls it Huron rain. The emissions that come out of that thing. He said one time he was selling pumpkins, and the pumpkins got these yellow stains wherever this Huron rain was like falling down on it.
Yeah, it's something else, but. I'll tell you something. You mentioned local development. The Binghamton local development, they're in a spot of bother now. They had to fire this director of theirs, the former disgraced city judge, Bob Murphy, who cannot be appointed or elected to a judgeship anymore. Otherwise, this whole matter would come up again. But he's saying, and I think what he did at the BLDC comes very, very close, if not to honest services fraud, which is big. It's a seldom used statute in the U.S. government. It relates to the wire fraud statutes, but a lot of these statutes don't involve actual bribes. It's just unethical behavior. So I think it's time that the Endicott Board of Trustees really start looking at themselves. Although, see, they're firmly convinced. At the Endicott Board of Trustees, there's not one that is not firmly convinced that their future revolves on these transfer payments, and they can't. They think that they can revitalize Endicott based on transfer payments. They're not sustainable. None of this stuff is sustainable. It's not organic, and here's the other part about it is that it's a small clique of people. And they only talk to themselves, and they're only interested in their own thing. The community at large is not represented and not involved, and we're not going to grow and prosper with this kind of setup. It's just impossible. It snuffs out all creativity, and that's just the sad part about it. But
now,
I don't know, Bob.
When you say transfer payments, are you talking about these payments that come from like the Empire State Development Corporation or LDC stuff, or
all these Main Street programs, and there's all kinds of competitions. There's that 76, whatever it is, 76 West or whatever the thing is, 86 West. I don't know what the heck it is. And then there's these Main Street revitalization grants, and then these insane competitions that pit us against Ithaca, who can build the environmentally friendly bocce ball court or something, and somebody wins on those things. So it's really lost capitalism. I mean, they wouldn't tolerate this kind of stuff in Eastern Europe, that's for sure. I mean, they've got a guy, I think it's in Latvia, that's making a car. He's giving it's an electric car. He's giving the stuff away. He's sort of a mad scientist guy. He started with absolutely no capital at all, and then he raised a few $100,000. He's gotten bigger since then, but it's cause for concern. And here's the other thing: they're wasting our time, Bill. All we've got is our time, and look at how many years these things. And look at this disaster in Binghamton. We had Emerson Electric in that former Anitech site. Emerson Electric, people may like corporations, they may hate them, but it was a Fortune 500 company, and that thing came out of the blue, and they never parlayed it. They never got anybody else in, and that's left. And now it's a coupon. It's a place where they make coupon books.
Oh,
for one
man.
coupon book.
Wow.
So, I mean, so all this talk about high tech, this and that. I don't know how high tech we are. And Bill, one more thing. Let's look at where we were in 1985, 86, 87. Money Magazine. We were right there with Austin, Texas. Right there, and everybody was talking about Broome County. Everybody was talking about the valley being a high-tech valley, being a very, very small place with all these name high-tech companies. We were a spot that was really the place of the future, and look at what we became.
Well, John, we've been talking for about an hour. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Now, how do people find you? You're pretty much active mostly on Twitter, is that right?
That's it. Binghamton Daily or John Solak. That'll pull it up on Twitter, and that's where I am right now.
Okay, so just like last minute announcements or happenings, you got anything that you want to put out there that people should be paying attention to or going to or?
Well, we got an IDA meeting tomorrow at noon. Who knows? They put a lot of last minute stuff on the agenda.
Where do they meet? Where does the IDA meet?
Well, they've got their own building on the Broome Community College campus right there. It's the first building, 5. It's called 5. They're trying to make it look like it's a private office building. And that's where and by the way, the head of the IDA now is also the head of the Chamber of Commerce. So she's got 3 spots. And that thing, as I'm talking to you now, the Broome County Land Bank is meeting, hiring a new director over at the public library. She has absolutely no experience except for a year or two as assistant city clerk. They're giving her an $86,000 a year job. They've done one project this year, $250,000. The Pipe Dream had a good article on the Broome County Land Bank, which years ago it said it was unsustainable. And the land bank was born because Ken Camlett, Mark Newman's attorney, kept pushing for it, and that's how the 50 Front Street project that came with millions and millions of dollars worth of our tax money funded that project. So really what we've got is we've got a Broome County legislative meeting on the Annoy the Police law, which all hell should break loose, no doubt, because of regardless of how you feel about it. And I was opposed to that law, Bill. But the protesters there are quite something. They're quite aggressive. They're not the gentlemen and ladies that we saw at Binghamton City Council meetings in the early 2000s. They're quite aggressive, and the police are going to accommodate them in their desire to probably be arrested again. But so that's something for sheer entertainment purposes. Probably tomorrow at 5:00, or Thursday at 5:00, people might check out.
And the IDA, when do they meet?
The IDA is tomorrow at noon. It's the first building as you enter Broome Tech. It's called 5. It's like a 3-story building. There's a Visions Federal. You don't actually have to go onto the campus. It's right there. They meet at 12 noon. Actually, there's a committee meeting before that, 11, and you'll watch those people. There's not too much scholarly debate. There's no passion. There's no zeal. And what's interesting is, Bill, these business deals, they're not negotiated. They seem to be all tied up with a ribbon around it, and you either accept it or you reject it. And that's the thing about, as you pointed out on your the lithium. This thing is just being crammed down the people's throats, and that's not a good thing. And it's an act of desperation. I wish you luck. I'll support you on it, and we'll see what happens. But I think you know what's coming. I think you know the fix is in. So you'll proceed on that basis, I guess.
Hey, John. So I appreciate your time. Just real quick, what's going to happen to the post office at the Battery at the Bible school?
They had an option at 5-year lease. That option was in place before this alleged sale. So that will be continuing. Adam Weitzman had to get that. He got sort of a semi-pardon from Cuomo, which so he could get the federal lease. So that's that's safe for 5 years should the U.S. Postal Service continue to operate that.
Yep. My mom went to school there when it was a practical Bible training school. So I've got a connection to that place. But anyway, thanks a lot, John. I appreciate your time, and maybe we'll do this again. I thought this worked out really well, and you're such a knowledgeable guy about local happenings. So if you want to do this again sometime, maybe we can find some time and try it again.
Always a pleasure, Bill.
Okay, John. Well, thank you. That was John Solak, also known as John from Binghamton, and he is on Twitter. Binghamton Daily is his Twitter handle, or you can just search for John Solak. And I do this work in the public interest, and I rely on donations and grants, and I have just moved recently, and I have a lot of unmet bills, so donations in any amount are appreciated. I'm trying to raise like about $700, like I got to come up with pretty quick. So if you turned off the wrong one, if you appreciate my work and you enjoy the research, the original research that I do, and if you enjoy these videos that I do and put on YouTube, I would appreciate donations in any amount, because your support really keeps me going and my research and these videos, and just in general my public service work. So donations in any amount are appreciated. tinyurl.com/donate to Bill Houston. That will take you to my PayPal. So that's it. I'm going to say over and out for now. And